Good evening, everybody. We are here for a wonderful panel, the most exotic panel of all, called Classics Today, New Perspective on Arabic Literature. Welcome you here. This is a panel which is more or less devoted to which takes place because and thanks to the Sheikh Zayed Book Award, which is one of the big literary prizes in the Arab world, coming from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. And it's organized by the Arabic Language Center in Abu Dhabi, and the head of the Arabic Language Center, Ali bin Tamim, is here. I welcome Ali bin Tamim. Thank you very much for promoting the prize and this panel, and for going into dialogue with the German public, or allowing us to do so. We are having a translation into Arabic في ترجمة عربية في القناة الثانية من الآلة. Und wir haben eine deutsche Übersetzung, das ist...
And there is a German translation on Channel 1.
Die Übersetzung macht Carmen Grau ins Deutsche und...
The interpreting is done by Carmen Grau into German and by Mustafa Al-Sleiman into Arabic. Thank you very much in advance.
I'm here on the panel with three of the most prominent researchers into classical Arab literature. Left from me is Beatrice Gründler. Beatrice Gründler, well, there's so much to say about her, it's difficult to say it all, but let's at least say that she got the Leibniz Prize, which is one of the big German research prizes. She's a professor for Arabistics, for Arabic language and literature at the Free University of Berlin. She taught in the United States before. She's one of the most prominent researchers in this field, and we are going to hear more about her when I ask her in person. Left or right from Beatrice is Maurice Pomeranz, who teaches at the New York University in Abu Dhabi, and who is the editor-in-chief, or one of the responsibles for the Library of Arabic Literature, which is a highly prominent book series. There are so many books in this series. I have forgotten how many have you edited? How many books are there in this book series now?
It depends how you count them. So.
Yeah. So,
but let's say over somewhere in the order of 50 unique titles.
Yeah, more than 50 books. But you also have pocketbook editions, yeah. And one. It's usually a bilingual series, but you have also one language series. Yeah. Okay, Maurice is sitting there and not there. I mixed it up. So this is Maurice. Welcome. And there in the middle, kind of, is Hakan Özkan, who is now a professor at the University of Aix-en-Provence, Marseille, in the south of France, but he studied in Germany and comes from Germany. He has done his PhD, a French-German PhD. I think it was between Cologne and the University of Cologne, is that correct? Yes, the University of Cologne. And also he has published his habilitation. That is a postdoctoral study necessary in Germany to become a real professor. He's published it recently, and it's called the History of the Eastern Zajjal. What that is, we will explain later. And he was with Beatrice on the short list of this year's Sheikh Zayed Book Award. You have to know that the Sheikh Zayed Book Award consists of several categories, and we are talking here about the category of Arabic culture in foreign languages. I think the prize is like 200,000 euros or something like that, so try to get it. I want to start, well, let's start with Hakan, because Hakan edited a volume, a very interesting volume, of research works, articles, and all of the panelists here have written for this book. Hakan was the editor, and Beatrice has a contribution, and Morris too. And it has the title, Doing Justice to a Wronged Literature. And it is a Festschrift devoted to Thomas Bauer, who's a professor for Arabistics in Münster. And I think he was, you collaborated with him for a long time, didn't you, Hakan? So which literature is this wronged literature?
Yes, thank you very much, Stefan, for this introduction, and also thank you here for inviting me here. So what is a wrong literature? Thomas Bauer created a group that is called Alea, which is not like the dices, but it means the literature of the 11th until the 18th century, which in German results into Alea. And Thomas Bauer was very invested in giving this literature its value and promoting it. You know, it doesn't need to be promoted normally because it is a very rich literature. It is a literature that, yeah, in itself, you know, has classics that writings, poems, prose that became classic. So yeah, there's another discussion that we can have, perhaps, you know, what is classic, because we have this in the title here, and it's a term that Thomas Bauer would completely reject, you know. So we avoided this word, we avoided this term. And what is it about it? It's about the literatures of those centuries, and also a lot of that is connected to these centuries, like also book tradition, yeah, genres, all this.
If I understand that correctly, I mean, this project, it is a research project financed by the Deutsche Fortschritte, I think, or something like that.
Yes.
And the important thing about this research project is Arabic literature is, it's not that it's unknown, especially classical, so-called, whatever that is, you know, classical literature from the beginnings onward, the early or pre-Islamic poetry, until, let's say, the 10th, 11th century. These are literatures which are comparatively well known. But this research project is devoted to a period of time where usually people said that was the period of decline. There wasn't any interesting Arab literature anymore after that period. And this is why, this is my reading, this is why this literature was wronged. Is that correct, or?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So there is a nice anecdote about this, you know. Well, it's not my anecdote, but Thomas wrote it into one of his articles. And he went to the library, I think in Cairo. It was, yeah, the National Library. And he asked about Mamluk literature. So Mamluk times, it's 13th until 16th century, more or less. And then the head of the library said, well, why are you doing research into Mamluk literature? There's only prophet, like eulogies for the prophet, and gay literature. You know, that's what Americans call gay literature. So that was the understanding of this head of the library. So basically, yeah, it's wrong because they think it's only that. And they don't, well, it has been inherited, this this conception, and this conception was brought up by, yeah, actually by orientalist researchers from the 19th, 20th century. This lasted until far into the 20th century, this reading.
This anecdote took place in Cairo,
in Cairo.
Did I understand correctly? So this librarian was not an orientalist, or not?
No, he was the head of the library then.
So it seems that even the Arabs themselves wronged their literature. Is that true?
Exactly, and because the Orientalists framed it like this.
Okay.
Not only, but also.
Okay.
You know, so this is very interesting, and this literature is just so rich. You know, we are just not only talking about Mamluk literature, also talking about the Ottoman times, where the production was profuse. So really, a lot to dig out still.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's why it's wrong, because nobody ever speaks about it, and it's not researched in depth.
Maybe that, this is just a thought I'm having, is that the problem with this literature is that it was so rich, that you have so many manuscripts and so few researchers doing research on that you are overwhelmed. And that is much easier to say, well, this is not important, let's forget it, let's concentrate on the big names. But this is, I think, Beatrice Grünter is doing a work which is contradicting this perception too. And she was on the shortlist with a book called The Rise of the Arabic Book. And we had the book fair, of course, so that is our topic, 100%. The Rise of the Arabic Book. For us, a book is a printed book, bound and to be sold in places like book fairs or bookstores or even supermarkets sometimes. What is the rise of the Arabic book? When took it place and what was the result of that rise? When the book was risen, what happened? How was it? There were, well, I have a quotation, but I leave it to you. Yeah.
Okay. The first was when I see it in the framework of global media history, because I also am interested in scripts and how human beings communicate. Human beings are very inventive. And interestingly, if you think about the invention of script per se, where was that? In Babylonia and Egypt, hieroglyphs. Where was the alphabet invented? Well, that is today's Lebanon, the Phoenicians. And then, of course, we have the printing press. If you read books on media history, they sort of jump from that to that, or they start with the printing press, and they said, oh, the Europeans got the paper from the Arabs. End of story. And I thought, wait a moment, there is a huge gap in between, because the first rich book culture of world history is the Arabic book culture. And a lot happened in this book culture that in European history you say, oh, this is a phenomenon of the printing revolution. You have a broad reading public, you have a broad readership, and languages are standardized, and so on and so forth. But in the 8th century, Arabic was standardized. There were books you could study, Kitab Sibawayh, and all these things, you could learn it. There was a huge oral literature that was professionally transmitted, be it the Quran, be it the Shi'r, the poetry, and Ruwat knows this by heart. So they had so much literature in their heads and professionally transmitted. And on came paper imported from Khurasan, really China, but via Khurasan. Then you had an unlimited material to write on, and boom, you had the book revolution.
Paper was cheaper than the material which were used before for writing. Was that the main reason?
It's not that it was so much cheaper, but it was made from trash. It was made from discarded ropes. Chinese made it from mulberry, but Arabic paper is made from rags. So you can reproduce it in unlimited fashion. It wasn't yet so cheap. It was still a little bit expensive, but then people could make their own copies. And because there was this great acceptance, there was no resistance. But I was looking for resistance. There's very little of it, a little bit at the end of the 8th century by Hadith scholars who didn't want to part with their knowledge. But that didn't last long. And then the acceptance and use of the book medium was overwhelming, even so much so that the independent author as a personality, a person who would just produce books and make money, like the likes of Al-Jahith, Ibn Qutayba, Abu Ubaid, that was a category of a profession, the independent author. And once the books were out, the scholarship lost control over knowledge, and anybody could read any book. So it broadened the dissemination of knowledge to an enormous extent and enabled independent people either to make money as book copyists or as authors or both.
What did the books look like? I mean, what shape did they have? Did they have like pages you turn like you do with nowadays books? Were they bound? Did they have a cover? Yeah.
books, they were different formats. They may not have been bound. Some were just fly leaves. And a typical Arabic book has a flap around it, so dust doesn't get in. But what is amazing is the early books have a very clear layout. There are indents, there are paragraphs, there's overlining, there's text marking, it was red ink or thick ink, or there's a lovely characteristic to Arabic scripts called mashq. You can stretch any word across the whole line. So the script itself permits for you to shape the page, and poetry is formatted in a different way into columns. So if you look at codices from the 9th century, not all, but some, you can immediately find the information. They're very user-friendly, if you will.
What are the eldest manuscripts you have seen or worked with? I mean, paper is not is a problematic material. It will not stay as it is for all time. So, what are the oldest manuscripts of that kind? You did research on.
The oldest Arabic
extant.
manuscript
I mean, still extant,
is
of
from
course.
the Islamic year 22. On papyrus, it's a requisitioning of sheep.
Okay.
So not only paper was used, there's also parchment and papyrus.
Okay.
So if you go to the 7th century, you get bits of, there is a lot of papyrus. Adolf Grohmann made a whole collection of it, and those papyri are interesting documents on real life. I mean, they're orders for ship nails and personal letters by women and men and things like that. Paper only comes at the end of the 8th century, but people used whatever they had, and Qur'ans typically were still written on parchment, which was the most durable, and they were often very illuminated, very beautifully illuminated, so you wanted to do that on a material that is not open to damage so much. Paper got damaged, not a problem, you copy the book again.
So you have in a traditional souk, in a traditional market, you have a part of the market is devoted to booksellers. Was it like that? I mean, we can still see it in Istanbul. I think you have the book market there at the beginning of the roofed market.
Yeah, there's the historian Yaqubi says at the end of the 9th century there were 100 book shops in Baghdad, and they were all in a Sharqiya, which is in southeast Baghdad. They were moved from downtown to the book markets. And there's also some anecdote about a noble father saying to his son, "If I ever catch you at the souk, don't be ever caught. This is not proper for men, except you may sit at the book market stand."
But of course, all the manuscripts were handwritten. This is why they are called manuscripts, obviously. So each copy was a bit different, huh? Or how did you guarantee that a certain book was what the author wrote or what the author wanted to convey?
This is an interesting story. The amazing thing is that some books get copied in a very faithful manner. The moment you have balagha, you have dawawin, you have poetry or philosophy, falsafa or scholarship, fiqh, tafsir, and so on. There is a checks and balances. It's an oral written transmission. It goes both ways. It's not from oral to written, but there's a constant checks and balances of a scholar who reads or has a student read, qira'ah, sama', pronounce it correctly, the noting is taken down, then the scholar gets it back to correct it, to collate muqabala with the model, to fix that it's exactly the copy, and when the muqabala is completed, then it's written balagha at the end. So it's not just copying, it's an entire conventionalized technique of transmission to ensure that certain books remained incredibly faithful to one model. Of course, you could write a commentary, but then it was a commentary, and sometimes books have a hyper commentary, and they were made zales, so appendices, abridgments, reorganizations. But these were then further digests, if you will, of same book. But while I say that, this is only true for scholarly books, and it's not true for others. We leave that for later.
Here's my quotation. During the 13th century, Europe's largest library owned fewer than 2,000 volumes. Libraries in the Arab world at the time had exponentially larger collections. 5 libraries in Baghdad alone held between 200,000 and 1 million books each, including multiple copies of standard works, so that their many patrons could enjoy simultaneous access. So there was also a large literacy. People knew how to read to an extent much larger than we know it from the European Middle Ages.
Indeed, the literacy much broader. You cannot compare it to today when we have public schooling.
Of course, yeah.
But it was certainly far wider spread, because everybody who learned to read Quran as a child then could read, because that remained the same language. And so more people were able to get those books. And if you read Nelly Halla's research from the 18th century, from bequest documents, so real data about who owned books, she counted the bequest documents in families, how many books people owned, and there were quite a bit. And then you have to add, I think, Hakan, you know way more about that, around the 17th and 18th century, anybody started writing books, and doctors and lawyers, they started writing books, and they used a kind of hybrid Arabic. So the independent author in the chronicle autobiography became a real genre, even something like journals just before printing took off.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because this is an important point. Usually the West, or scholars in the West, tend to say, well, the Arab world in the 19th century was very backward. There was no printing press. The first printing press came with some military expeditions, or the missionaries, the Christian missionaries established them, and so on. And this is a sign that the Arab world was backward. But maybe it's the other way around. The Arab world was so advanced that for them the printing press didn't add anything new. I mean, that was maybe an exaggeration a bit, but the tendency is like that, isn't it? I mean, they already had what in Europe we only had during when we established the printing press.
To a certain extent, that's true, because time was cheap, people had time, and those copyists were quite fast. And a lot of scholars, they copied books to make half the day, they would copy books to make money, and the rest they did their scholarship. And the other way around is exactly the words of Dana Sajdi, who explains a printed book is actually not a very impressive thing, because a printed book is naked of any human expertise. It's lousy quality. The printer decides what to print. It might just be the European printing in the second round. It is the printers who chose something that everybody would buy, some cheap, stupid Latin grammar or so. An Arabic manuscript is, as I said, is optimized by many, many readers who commented on the site, who corrected, who added. So a manuscript comes with its own enrichment history. It has a whole social life. Mm-hmm. And then you take anything and you print it, and all of that is gone. Mm-hmm. So a printed book is a loss of information for somebody who grows up with the Arabic manuscript tradition.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. We will go deeper into that, but I want to ask Maurice before, because Maurice is with the Library of Arabic Literature of the New York University in Abu Dhabi, is responsible for making many of those manuscripts accessible, translating them and editing them in scientific or academic editions. And when we just had our talk before the panel, we realized that these books are not present at Frankfurt Book Fair, which is really a shame, because it's a beautiful series, blue books, all bound in blue linen, bilingual, a very nice typeset. It's really a wonderful book series, and I envy you and the English-speaking world so much for that book series. I would love to have something like that in German, but I think we will never have it. So how did it come about that you found, because even in the English-speaking world, which is much larger than the German-speaking world, we didn't have something like that, a series devoted to publishing classical Arab literature in decent, but at the same time accessible editions, and that even bilingually. How did it come about? I mean, who started this initiative?
Of course, it was a large group of scholars who did it. I should mention the name of my colleague Philip Kennedy in New York, who is really the general editor and the spearhead of all of this. I think it gets back to the first question, actually, the question of a wronged literature. I think that was very much on people's minds. How do you redress a wrong? I think in the course of doing that series, in the course of working on the series, I worked mainly as an editor on, and it was my privilege to work with some wonderful translators, like to mention Humphrey Davies, of course, Allah yarhamu. I think one thing that became evident to all of us in doing this was that redressing this wrong, if one wants to think about it, and not committing other wrongs along the way is actually quite a difficult thing to do. In fact, and one of the things that became clear to us was that the training that we started with, which was, basically both on the one hand, the comparing of various manuscripts to one another, finding a reliable origin from which to translate from, like what is the basis of something that is in fact a living, organic part of a culture is a very difficult thing to do. And that's something that you face every day as a translator and an editor. You are in some ways forced to act occasionally as a surrogate author, and you do not want to take that role, but occasionally, as anyone who knows who translates, sometimes you have to take the reins of the horse and say, well, he means this, the text means this. This is difficult, and this, I think, we have to, it creates in one a certain humility, a certain sense that if this is a library, it's an unfinished library. It's one that I think began as an, I often say that, it's sort of, in some way, what could be the end of such a library of this? It's more valuable in the attempt than the product. And that, I think, is very, to me, I'll tell you, of course, for readers, it's wonderful to have the resource. It's wonderful, but it's one that I think to get at the complexity of and where these works have come from. On the one hand, we need these translations. On the other hand, we desperately need the kind of studies that my colleagues have produced, which provide context and actually. So that, I think, redressing a wrong, in the end, we're fooling ourselves if a library could be the answer. It's only part. We'll never, that in itself is sort of, as Germans would say, Ersatz. It's not the thing itself. And that, I think, is a lesson learned along the way. Products are seductive things. Book markets are seductive. I was thinking actually a little bit about the man who said, his son should sit in the bookseller's stall, because I translated a maqama from the Mamluk period by Ibn Abi Hajjala, who talks about the seductions of the book market, because there you can read books that aren't authorized by the shuyukh, by the learned elites. So in some ways, getting at those kinds of questions is interesting to me. Libraries and books they're commodities, but they're commodities that had a life within a social structure that I think is equally valid and important for us to think about always.
Yeah, what the Library of Arabic Literature definitely adds or does against this perception of a wronged literature is it adds a visibility, because these are very nice ones. This is next book fair, please. Everybody bring those books, and all 50 or 60 you have. Yes. They are splendid. You would want to have it immediately. Even if you don't know Arabic, I've never heard about the author. It's great books, really bring them. And this, of course, is my next question. New York University is a renowned university, but still, you need some sponsorship, somebody who finances it. We don't want to know the intimate details, but how how does it work? I mean, who is financing these series of books, or how do you do it? In collaboration with whom?
It's a grant from the Abu Dhabi government. So,
okay. Oh yeah, wonderful.
And of course, projects like these are, important, I think, for Arabic literature. Much like the Sheikh Zayed Prize, it's seeing. And one thing I think I've learned, I've lived in the UAE for 14 years now, and I've seen how, on the one hand, there's a great concern for the Arabic language. I see it with students who come to my class who are local, but they feel that they don't know their literature. And I also see it from the older generations who run the country, a real concern for preserving Arabic literature and a willingness to really collaborate and participate with scholarship around the world. And that, to me, is, in fact, an extremely meaningful thing, because my own work has always been collaborative. The Library of Arabic Literature, my own scholarship is mainly done with a collaborator, Bilal Orfali, and we found that our combined skills are far greater than our individual contributions. And that, I think, is, if the classics teach us anything, it's probably something along those lines. It was an organic world of scholars checking one another, writing what are called hawashi, commentaries, like we're laughing because Dr. Grundler wrote that on my dissertation, and I benefited greatly from it.
She was supervising it?
She was a reader of it.
Oh, wow.
I don't mean to embarrass her. But the reality is, of course, that's part and parcel of an academic culture that is alive, and one that exists very much in the Middle East. And Arab scholars have long had that as a part of their training. And that's, I think, really, if there was some way of redressing wrongs, it's actually that collective work.
I think the fact that these books are bilingual in Arabic and English, and that for such a large series of books is really something specific, and it opens up this series to a very diverse readership, a very international readership. And I don't know from your experience, but I think it must be as well important for Western scholars, students, whatsoever, as it is for Arab or Muslim students. Isn't that the fact?
Well, it's true. I mean, students, my teaching in Abu Dhabi, I would say around half of my students are native speakers of Arabic. And they come to my classes to take a course in masterpieces of Arabic literature and translation. In the course, in many ways, the 19th and 20th centuries have been a moment, if on one hand, of course, we're looking for repair, but there have also been rupture with the past, which I think has happened all over the world. The Middle East is no exception. In this way, these books open up, like bilingual editions do, the capacity to go back in and, if the grammar is still difficult for you, you can still identify keywords on the other side of the page. You can wonder, if your language is excellent, you can wonder at actually, would I have translated it in this way? And I hope that actually between these two things, we go to a third place where people try their own, and actually whether on the one hand they are going to produce finer translations, or perhaps this is maybe an attempt to write a qasida in English along the same lines as the poems that they see in these volumes. So may they be inspirations in many different kinds, because after all, many of the works that were chosen some of them were great works of scholarship, so they can inspire us there. Some were great works of imagination, so they can inspire us there. I mean, frankly, we were, I think, to some degree conscious of the kinds of books we were choosing, but frankly, the tradition is so vast and so varied that even books that you might think it's one way, like you read Shafi'i's Risala, which we think of as a great work on jurisprudence, but it's also an amazing meditation on language. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I could go on and on about the nature of these books that we think they're one way, but in fact, they're hybrid, and they take us in many different directions.
Well, that's cool. And also, I think the Western primacy on knowledge is decentered, or Europe is provincialized in many ways by that theory. Hakan, you were on the shortlist for the Sheikh Zayed Book Award this year with your book, a book in German, which is quite rare because English is read by most of the jury, members of the jury, but German not. So congratulations to God on the shortlist with a book written in German. Die Geschichte des östlichen Zajal, the story or the history of the Eastern Zajal. So everybody here, I guess, knows what the Zajal is, or can even pronounce it. Some do, I think. So, yeah, I have a rough idea, but you know it much better. So tell me, please, what is it, and what makes it so exciting that you needed to write a book and even your postdoc habilitation on it?
Yes. Okay. So I was very surprised to hear that somebody even read this book. Because first it's in German, and then I'm really feeling with the people that in the jury that read this book, because it has about 586 pages or something like that. So Madhloom, you know, talking about wrong, not wrong, but this time it's more like tormented and yeah, people. So yeah, I really appreciate the effort, and also, of course, yeah, being elected on the shortlist. So yeah, what is a Zajal? You know, everybody knows songs. You know, we listen to songs all over. And you can imagine a Zajal like, yeah, a song. You know, you listen to any kind of song, a pop song or something like this. So it starts with a line, yeah, a punch line, let's say, a line that really gets you into the mood. And then you have somewhere, you have a refrain, you know, like a repeated line. So yeah, it's strophic poetry. And Zajal is special because it has dialectal intrusions. Well, if I say dialect, I don't mean the dialect that is spoken on the street. It's stylized dialect. So normally, everybody who knows a little bit of Arabic knows that Arabic has these endings, you know, the i'rab it's called, and it actually shows the grammar of the language. You normally don't see it when you have a written text before you. So in these poems...
Shortly interrupt you, because I think the most important thing you say, it's strophic poetry.
Yes.
It's strophic poetry, and well, why is that remarkable? Because poetry in Western languages is mostly strophic, you know, has several strophes.
Yes.
And the classical qasida, the classical Arab poem from pre-Islamic times on, doesn't have a strophe. It's just one large poem, can be more than 100 lines, and even very long lines ending with the same rhyme. So Zajal is different in that sense, you know. It also, the rhyme changes, I think, from time to time. And so this is, it has been invented in Andalusia, in the western part of the Arab world, wasn't it?
Yes,
And then
exactly.
it also went to the east, and that is the topic of your study.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so scholarship was concerned with the Andalusian type, so coming from Al-Andalus, which already, well, they are regarded as the inventors of this, and it's also thought that this poetic form was at the origins of the troubadour traditions.
Yeah.
So it is one of the, let's say, most influential poetic forms, not only for the Arab world, but also for Europe. And so it actually traveled from Al-Andalus to the Eastern world. And the biggest proponents were the like the Sufi, or like the philosophic thinkers and Sufis like Ibn Arabi and Shushtari. They actually brought it in a way to Egypt when they were on their way, or some other people before them even. Yeah, we talk about like 11th to 12th century, to Mecca, So this is one of the explanations how it traveled. And then a wholly individual tradition got alive and was brought to life in the East. And East we mean Egypt, Greater Syria, Iraq. Yes, so there was a lot of production, and also it spanned many genres. It was not only about one subject, there were a lot of subjects. And this is the way it traveled.
And it was, do I understand correctly, that this was, especially the Eastern Zajal, the Western Andalusian Zajal was quite known, even I heard about it. The Eastern Zajal has been neglected as part of that wronged literature, we could say, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. So we have on many fields, we have a neglection here, or a neglect. So first thing is, this belongs to the later centuries. So this is one. The next thing is we have a type of vernacular in the poetry. And this was one of the biggest factors that was the reason for the exclusion of this type of literature from many scholarly works or anthologies. Two main reasons, but also it was practiced by, let's say, ordinary people also. So we have an elite, non-elite approach, but we should not think that the non-elite people didn't mingle with the elite people. The Zajal was practiced in various ways by elite poets too. And this is very interesting to see that these, when we talk about how was it practiced, who did this, and where. So the elite poets, they thought this is very interesting, this is fresh, this is, it has quality, a different quality. No, it's not like this highbrow style of poetry. Some of the Zajals that I analyzed are, in fact, if you compare them, they are interpreted like a rap song. Why? Because there is no like Khalilian meters. You know, we have to explain this. There is a set of meters, traditional meters used in the standard poetry, let's say. And the Zajal and the practitioners of Zajal, they deviated from this rule. So they had their mixed rules, they had mixed meters, and they used stress to have their prosody and to build their poems on this, and to have very short, double, these are not feet, we can call them, which are in a staccato kind of way. You see them when you analyze the structure. You see there is no meter in them, but there is a different kind of logic behind that. It's the accent, it's the rhythm, and then you see, okay, this if you want, you can, and it leads you to it. You know what I mean? So if we had the time, I could check some.
You can rap some.
It's actually it's a very, very nice. It imposes itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
And did you study only manuscripts, or do you have also printed editions? Modern printed editions you can rely on.
Difficult question. So mostly manuscripts. I had about, I don't know, 110.
Wow.
Some of them very useful, some of them not very useful. Then you have printed books too, edited books, also the same problem, quality of edition, because as soon as dialect gets in, as soon as the absence of, the correct forms, let's say, Not correct. but
Grammar,
So they have an
Yeah.
own system. So the people try to correct it, hyper-correct it.
Yes.
You know, they correct something that should not be corrected because it is part and parcel of the poem, and that's one of the problems that you have. But when you have the old anthologies like Nawaji and so on, you have also Zajals in there, and also from the elite literateurs and poets. So yes, you find them in both, but to have a big picture, that's what I tried in the history of the Zajal, the Eastern Zajal, is to get a big picture and to bring to the fore this part of literature that has been, completely forgotten. Yes.
That's interesting. A good way to publish some of those poems or to present different editions and so on have been developed in the digital humanities, you know, and you are a protagonist for, at least for the Arabic studies in Germany, doing that, presenting Kalila Wadimna, a collection of animal fables, in studying it and presenting in that way together with your students. Can you tell us about the chances or the new possibilities, opportunities provided by digital means?
Gladly. It was in a way impossible to do it in any other way. When I wanted to teach Kalila Wadimna in a course on the classics of world literature, and I thought this is a wonderful book to represent Arabic culture.
It's a very popular animal fables, very old, from the 8th century, you know, coming from India and then to the outward. So this is one of the great classics of Arabic literature, but it's also always presented in one. Yeah, you know more about it. Tell us.
So I thought, great, let me get a translation and I teach you to, you know, the undergraduate student at Yale University at the time. I didn't find a translation and I didn't find any useful editions. And I thought, what is going on? This is such an important book. Then I looked at the manuscripts. The manuscripts are 500 years after the 8th century. They start with the 13th century. And I understood why, because they differ drastically from each other. And we have the anonymous redactors and co-authors who improve them. And then I thought, what do I do now? And this is the beginning of thinking a text that is fluid, that is moving, text on the move. How do you show that historically correctly? You want to give the picture of the tradition that is on the move. I'm catching a text on the move. So in our edition, we transcribed many edition versions. We first figured out what is the landscape of the tradition, to pick the 15 that are the most diverse from each other. And our students had fun. Our students love transcribing manuscripts. They think this is the coolest thing. And then we corrected those and segmented them, put them side by side. So in this edition, it's online. This is the Kalila Wadimna edition on the Freie Universität. You can look for it and then you find it. And you can read across, or you can read this way, or you do keyword search, whichever. And then the second step was...
There's a synopsis in the end.
Yes, they are multi-text edition. Each column is one manuscript, and you can read the whole variety of how does the story end. Does the wrong the jackal, is he reconciled by the king, or does he leave? In one version he leaves, in the others he can be reconciled, but how the king gets a talking to, and from his mother, and so on and so forth. So it's really cool how the stories change. And you can trace it, and you can, out of those traces, you can dig out what the redactors did. So we're profiling those anonymous redactors as well. So there are many hidden co-authors. And that's the fun part. So I have to say the students are having great fun, and they also like that it's a very modern way to do Arabic studies. Use artificial intelligence as well to read those faster, to get sort of a reading and an analysis of, you know, which texts are closest with each other. So they come and they say, oh, I have this new tool I can segment now with artificial intelligence. So they get going on ideas how to deal with it in a digital way, while retaining the philological rigor and the scientific way of dealing with Arabic. And I think this is a wonderful potential for our field to develop.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting, and also very interesting for students. And also remarkable is, maybe if you have some questions, think about it. We have 1 minute left, or 2 or 5. I think there's more left because there's no other session after us, isn't it? Anyhow, it's the interesting thing is it's these with the manuscripts. Something happens which doesn't happen so easily with books. That the tradition is fluid, and that it's a living tradition, and every copyist can also become a redactor or even a co-author or whatever you can call him, isn't it?
Yes. And what I forget to say is this all is also possible because of a lot of the manuscript libraries now put all their manuscripts online. Yeah. So while we have computers, we have the fastest and easiest way to get to the manuscripts. And manuscripts are beautiful things because they have the touch of the author. So it's something very specific about the manuscripts. Like, it's the person's almost there, and you can combine the very old way of making a manuscript with the most modern way of analyzing this. And this is the beauty of it.
Yeah, it sounds really fascinating. So everybody here who likes to start his study of Arabics, please go ahead. Any questions? Any questions? We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yes, please.
Hello. I'm extremely interested by what you have done. We have published a lot concerning I want to speak about the bilingual first, and because we have published and distributed the UNESCO books in Beirut, which is الروائع الإنسانية والعالمية, in Arabic and French or English or even in other languages. But I wanted to ask if you have this bilingual edition page by page, or you have all the text in Arabic and then the text in other language.
No, it's page by page, which is of course more convenient for the reader. It also makes the translator and the editor feel much more naked, as you. So it's very easy to compare. Much more pressure. Yes.
It's even paragraph by paragraph.
Yes, of course.
So you can very easily. I love them for teaching. My favorite is Akhbar al-Sin wal-Hind, the Ibn Fadlan story to meet the Vikings. There are 2 movies about it, and I had to always teach that. And like, I take that, and they can read the English and they can read the Arabic, and it's keyed paragraph by paragraph, so you can jump back and forth.
Yeah, one can only imagine how in a digital age, if people, I know we still think the Ahsan Jalis is a kitab, so we like to have the physical object, but I think, for operations like this, other fields have really gone digital in ways that we're just on the verge of doing, and I think there's just endless promise there as well. So new readers are very different.
Yeah, both are necessary and great. We are advised to stop because people also want to go home. Thank you very much for your attention. We definitely have to bring the Library of Arabic Literature and open up a space for the digital humanities too. And then we have everything together. Thank you very much, Carmen Grau, Mustafa Sulaiman, Ali bin Tamim, the Sheikh Zayed team, the book fair, the Lit Prom. Thank you very much for having been with us.